Thanks for coming out tonight. This is our second installment of the Innovations in Media series. We're very excited about the panel we put together tonight. Tonight we're focusing on how technology is changing the way we buy and sell advertising. And it seems as though it's almost a given nowadays that the media devices, the network that the content's delivered through, the way we measure it, how people consume media, that changes regularly. It's a new landscape, and we've got an all-star panel. Thanks for stealing my line. To talk about it, starting on the far left with Joe Plummer, who's a senior associate at Olson, Zaltman Associates, and a professor at Columbia Business School. Okay, my list is different. Brian Adams, CTO at AdMeld, and Ari Bluman, President, North America Sales and Operations for 24/7 Media, and many of you probably already recognize Stuart Elliott, advertising columnist for the New York Times. He's been covering advertising, marketing, and media topics for over 2 decades, and has written on it in several publications: USA Today, Advertising Age, Detroit Free Press, and Times Union, Rochester, New York. I'm very excited to hear firsthand Stuart's insights, and also hoping that he can work in a couple of digs on Rochester at Don's expense. I know it's been a little while, but Don's an RIT graduate. I went to Buffalo, so yeah, anything we can say about Rochester that's less than flattering would be great. All right. With that said, Stuart.
Hello, everybody, and good evening. Thank you so much for coming this evening. We're going to have some interesting discussion, I hope and pray, up here this evening. Each of the panelists is going to start off with a brief synopsis of what they do, what they used to do, what they want to do, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, all those wonderful things. And then we're going to have some dialogue up here on some of the issues that are keeping them up at night and making them also look forward to the new year. And then we're going to leave lots and lots of time for your questions. So while we're jabbering up here, please think of, if you're going to ask a question, jot something down, and we'll figure out a way to deal with that as we move forward. So I am going to start with the panelist who is immediately to my left, and that's Ari. So that's you. You're up to bat.
Nice. Ari Bluman, how are you? President, 24/7 Real Media, North American Sales and Ops. Very long title, and forgive my voice. We just have so much fun every day that got away from me this week. 24/7, very simply, is a technology company that helps publishers around the world run their digital media businesses, serving ads into any environment whatsoever. That includes elevators, it includes the web, includes mobile, includes what I would not recommend, but OnStar, which we tested that once back about 7 years ago.
Ads on OnStar?
Yeah, when you're stuck in the mud and you hit bad idea.
Before we send help, we'd like you to listen to this credit card solicitation.
You should have bought Michelin tires.
In addition to the technology, we also run a media business and help those publishers that use our technology through our technology to monetize their inventory across sites. There's over about 4,000 publishers around the world that we help them actually bring the money to the table. About 3.5 years ago, 24/7 Real Media was bought by WPP, which is the largest holding company in the media business, spending about $82 billion a year on behalf of their clients. So that's just added a whole new world of excitement for us as we help them build technology and build competitive advantage for their clients and their partners.
Okay.
Is that brief enough?
That was nice and succinct. Ari, thank you. And Brian, please.
It's going to be tough to follow. So, hi, my name is Brian Adams. I'm the founder and CTO of AdMeld. We're a startup here in the city, about 3 years and 1 month old. A few people ask me, what do you guys do? I can't tell from your website. So as I was telling Joe, we started the company, the DNA of the company is to help publishers utilize technology to make money from their site. We work with guys like 24/7 and a lot of other folks out there giving kind of publishers the tools to better monetize what they have. We started out working with ad networks in 3 years ago. That was kind of all the rage, and have since moved on to ad exchanges and also helping publishers manage data around advertising. And next year we're getting into mobile as well.
But not OnStar.
No on.
Not that mobile.
Not that mobile.
And Joe?
Okay, I have trouble holding down a job, so I'm doing a lot of things. I'm the non-Luddite on the panel. I get destroyed by my 14-year-old grandson. Any video game, not just the hard ones like Halo, any video game. And I'm no good with numbers, although last evening my 5-year-old grandson said, "Grandpa, why is 6 afraid of 7? I said, "James, I don't know." He said, "'Cause 7, 8, 9. So that's kindergarten humor for you today, in case you didn't see it on YouTube with Annoying Orange or something else that was going on there. I'm teaching at Columbia, and one of the courses that I teach is emerging media. It's become very popular. I'm even getting, some of the finance guys coming over and signing up for the class. It's an elective. I've been lucky to work for a long time in the ad business, as you can tell. I've been around for a long time, and right now I feel very lucky in that I'm able to work with a number of startups and interesting companies like Mark Holdreth's Media Advisory Partners company. I'm learning so much about this brave new world that we're in. It's such an exciting time, and it's a time of real disruption. I mean, I work more with marketers than I work with agency people, and I have to say they're a lot of them are kind of struggling with this. And the main reason I think they're struggling, and the agencies also are struggling a little bit, but not so much, is that I think that they thought of the internet as a new medium, and it's not. It's a new part of our life, all parts of our life, every possible part you can imagine. So unlike television, which played a role in our lives, one of the major roles was when we were working hard like these guys work every day, you come home and you want to take your brain out and put it in some warm water for a little while. and television clearly played that role. But the internet is just everywhere in our life, and so you can't silo it, you can't treat it like a medium. Of course you can monetize it. I mean, some of the most valuable companies in the world today are companies that have been built up on the back of the internet. So until you're able to sort of get out of, well, what kind of medium is it? Is it like outdoor? Is it like the Yellow Pages? Is it television? Is it radio? Is it direct marketing? Kind of what? First, the answer is it's all of those and more. So on that, I'll just go back to the moderator.
Okay, well that's hopefully gives you a little bit of an idea of where our panelists have their heads at during the day, or I guess these days 24/7, if I can use the plug. I thought I'd just start off. There was a couple of references to mobile. And, there's an old saying about Brazil. Brazil is the country of the future and always will be. I think a lot of hopes have been pinned on mobile marketing and advertising for several years now. And clearly in other countries, it's much more of a factor than it is here in the U.S. And I thought we'd just kick off by kicking around mobile for a while here from each of your perspectives in terms of whether it's going to truly turn into a viable advertising medium, or is that going to be sort of the line where consumers are going to draw the line saying, you know, I'll put up with ads on TV and in magazines and in this and that and on websites, but this is where I ain't going to be wanting to see things on my smartphone or whatever device Steve and the mad elves at Apple are working on as we sit here right now. Does anybody want to take that? The GE College Bowl, they used to call it a toss-up. So does anybody want to take that one for starters?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of counter to your joke, we always say, 2010 is the year of mobile, and then 2011 is the year of mobile.
Exactly.
The first,
it's not counter to the joke. It's exactly
it's the companion to your joke.
Right, there we go. Yeah.
The first time I worked in mobile was in 2000, 2001. There was actually a whole wave of investment activity. A lot of people were excited about Bluetooth. Something nobody really thinks about anymore, except they want to use their hands-free device. But I personally think that mobile advertising is going to be huge.
When?
And in a way, it already is. It's kind of funny. I'm a kind of loyal iPhone user, and 2 days ago I bought an Android phone. So I don't.
And you carry both of them?
I'm right now carrying both, and I can SIM card between the two of them and use either one. And it's funny because the first thing I noticed, one of the first things about Android is when I go into the marketplace, almost all the apps are free. But they almost all have advertising in them. I downloaded an app to kill off programs that were running in the background eating my battery. Very utility kind of program. And then like banner ads were popping up as I was killing programs. So I was like, that's strange.
Be careful what you download.
Yeah. On the other hand, I'd be happy to pay that $1.99 for that program because it actually is saving my battery. So I think there's just a balance to be struck between the value that people receive from services, and some of it's going to be, through payment. Some of it's going to be through advertising. Mobile has, when advertising works, it's actually a benefit to your life, right? Like if you're, in the market for a car and you stumble across an ad that's the perfect car and you end up buying it. I mean, that's actually a useful thing.
And the September issue of Vogue magazine every year is the most read of the year because people want to see those ads.
Exactly, and people when you go to read the news and you have Punch the Monkey 5 times on the page and it's distracting you, that's advertising not working. So I think there's a lot to be sorted out in mobile, but all the potential is there because you can purchase things with your phone. You have location-specific information. I don't know how that's exactly going to be disclosed. You can see there's people are dancing around the ways to get around location. Like Foursquare is a way to bypass, automatically taking your location, right? They've now convinced you to tell them where you are, and then you get the coupons, right? People think that'll be automatic at some point, but obviously there's a lot of cultural things to work through to get to that.
Is coupons and deals and such, is that going to be sort of the, I don't want to say Trojan horse, but is that going to be sort of the stalking horse for mobile to become more accepted in this country?
I think if it makes people feel like the cost benefit is there, it's like, hey, I just saved $5 in this store because of this coupon. These things are pretty cool. If that starts happening, then yeah, I think that could push things forward. Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I have 19% of the publishers that use my technology in the U.S. have mobile applications and serve ads into mobile. So definitely we talk about every year the year of mobile. We were in mobile in 2000 as well, and way ahead of its time. Did a great big deal with NBC, and it was so much fun. But I believe I read a stat that about the mobile spending this year was going to be $3.5 billion. So the explosion we're waiting for.
Is that good? Is that chicken feed or is that good?
That's a pretty big number in my opinion.
That's a good number. Out of what, $300 billion a year spent on advertising in this country?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Plus or minus.
but if you look at how much is spent on display in the U.S. alone, that's a pretty good proportion. And realistically, if you're looking at a little tiny ad on a mobile device, isn't really as enticing as an ad on a website would be.
Yeah, but if the ad says save $5 on that store that you're standing in front of, that's a hell of a proposition.
No doubt, couponing will be a
or QR code type thingies and other.
We've been talking about LBS for or location-based services for a long time for targeting. Privacy is going to be a big issue, and realistically, the biggest thing holding back this year of mobile, at least in our minds, is who owns what, where, and why. Right? The carriers, the content owners, and until that all gets figured out, if it ever does. We're never going to believe it's really here, but it's certainly now. It is a stop. It is part of every digital plan, or at least considered on every digital plan as a piece of the equation. And what I like to look at when I talk to clients, I'm talking to them about looking at the plan itself as digital versus bucketing all the money. I think the biggest problem clients have is to understand. This is going to mobile. This is going to display. This is going to search.
Do you think that that's going to change when the 22-year-olds are clients and they think of it in a integrated, holistic kind of? It's not a digital plan to them. It's a plan.
I have asked.
Is that what's going to make that change, or?
I have asked 12 different CEOs of ad agencies, the question of how long will it take until digital is looked at by a client and the agency. Where their strategy is one line item of digital and then a lot of breakdowns of what they actually did and executed against. And the earliest that anyone believed out of that small little survey was 4 years. The longest was, and I think 7 of them said, not in their lifetime.
Wow. Well, my theory is if we could shut everything down for about 6 months and reorganize the whole, every organization that has to, everything's bolted on. Every time there's a new innovation, it's sort of bolted on. And my feeling is if we could close everything down and rethink it and reorganize it and put digital at the center, or stop labeling it digital and just talk about it as advertising, because for this growing tens of millions of people in Generation Y or Generation Z or whatever the labels are these days, I mean, this is what they think of. This is it's like asking the fish what the water is. I mean, they don't even think of it. It's water. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, when you're teaching, I don't know how, I guess there's a range of students, obviously, in business school, age-wise, but I'm curious as to what kind.
Not a huge range.
Not a huge range. Okay, all right, but
they're all much younger than I am.
In terms of mobile and in terms of the way they look at all of this, what you see.
Yeah, the perspective that I bring forward on mobile is, at the moment there's somewhere between 5.5 billion and 6 billion mobile phones in the world, and there's about 1.7 billion PCs. So you have to think of mobile as the global technology, and for you to reach them and for them to reach you. And the other thing we talk a lot about is that you can't use the traditional marketing mass media model with mobile, because the interrupt and repeat kind of mental model of advertising is countered to how just that technology exists in people's lives. It's got to have a lot more interactivity and relevance, both as Brian was saying, personal relevance, that is somehow it's quite targeted, but it also needs the timing and location relevance. So when you put that all together, as is happening in most markets outside the United States, I mean, mobile as an element of the marketing budget outside the US and places like Korea and Japan and Scandinavia and so on, is anywhere from 3 to 10 times larger than it is here in the US.
Well, that's because they've got functioning mass transit
That's
systems.
correct.
And people live hours away from the downtown,
Well,
and they sit on the train on the way to work and on the way home, and they're looking at their little gadget.
It's for a lot of reasons. But for example, in places like Japan, Korea, and China, and Southeast Asia, the reason the mobile phone is so important to them is their home is about the size of this table. No, I'm dead serious about that. And so there aren't 4 PCs and a big TV set, you know, an entertainment center in the middle of the room. And the second thing is that, you know, as you say, they use public transit a lot, which the U.S. outside of New York hasn't discovered yet. But
and never will.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Things seem to be going.
But the other thing that I think I'm seeing a lot in new applications in mobile, new ideas, is to make it really fun, because you just watch people with their mobile device and they play with it. It's not, I don't mean there isn't serious information going back and forth, but it's got this play character to it. And so the more you can turn your brand idea, your brand message, the conversation that you want to create, the better off it is. One of the biggest uses in mobile in the U.S. is at ball games and concerts when a question comes up and you text in, you know, no, I hate the Rangers, I love the Devils. It's like, wow. But that, so it sounds dumb simple, but it's fun. And you're there and you're with the other people and you can imagine the other people are doing it. So it somehow is very different than a lot of the other media.
Well, there is that horrible term, advergaming. And so there have been efforts to try to present
and there is
the
a lot
pitches
of that. There's a lot
in
of
the
that.
form of a sugarcoat them with some sort of play or gaming kind of
and it's quite engaging and quite effective. And it really is early days. I mean, it's like the early days of you know, search. I mean, in the beginning of search, people said, oh, well, pen. I want to sell my pen. So the search word is pens. And then you began to realize, oh my gosh, you know, you got to get a little more creative than that, and suddenly, you know, response rates went up and so on. So I think the same kind of learning curve is going to take place with mobile.
All right. Okay. We touched on privacy, and obviously that's a topic that's perhaps even more of a concern when it comes to mobile marketing or any kind of digital marketing than the traditional, when it comes to the traditional media. I mean, there is that percentage of the population that sits at home wearing their aluminum foil hats and thinking that the TV is talking to them and following them around, but those people are mostly discredited.
They're in the Nielsen panel.
They are. And some of them were just elected to the House of Representatives.
In a landslide.
In a landslide. However, when it comes to the new media, I think, again, you know, you have the idea that sort of the battles that the public, that the consumers feel that they lost years ago when it comes to intrusiveness of advertising in their mailboxes and on TV and in print and so forth. It seems that they're trying to, they sense that they have some ability to hold back the tide this time around. And there is obviously aggressive effort by consumers and consumer organizations to make this an issue. And I guess you all saw the coverage yesterday and today of the Do Not Track proposal, which obviously is going to be something hotly debated, in the coming weeks and months. Usually, Do Not Track is something that I hear at the office. People say, I tried to read your story, but it did not track. But in this context, I think it's going to turn into a real firestorm in terms of what people are asking for the marketing community to do in terms of relinquishing the ability to follow people around as they hop from website to website. So whichever one of you guys want to talk about privacy and what kind of concerns you or your clients have or don't have on the subject. Does anybody want to open that can of worms?
I'll start very quickly.
Okay.
I find the do not track list actually a little bit humorous for the point of, in order to be on the do not track list and in order not to be tracked, you need to be tracked. And that's just very true. And you need to be tracked. So whoops, they didn't get that part. But as you can imagine, WPP and 24/7 itself spends a lot of time in Washington, a lot of time setting trends, and we always have been. And our chairman and CEO, 24/7, and founder is chairman of the IAB. So we're very, very active helping to educate, and that's really what the problem is with legislators today, is they just don't understand, and it goes down to the people wearing the hats and worrying about TVs talking to them. Agreed. It's.
Do you think any of the concerns are valid?
There's definitely there definitely over the years has been some bad things. There's been evildoers, people that are malware and executables where actually. Many times in my 13 years, my computers have been crushed due to viruses or spyware being on my computers that hurt my computer. I'm sure, but I think that the work that's been done over the last couple of years in order to improve the self-regulation of the industry has been impressive. I think better advertising, for instance, or an icon and education. It really. I'll pass it on in about 8 seconds. Education is the problem. People just don't understand, and when you compare it to what's happening in the traditional world, I mean, you go to buy a car, there's your credit report flying around, everything you've ever bought on your credit card, any type of information that's imaginable. Where online in digital world, PII, no one's touching it. The best players in the world aren't going near it because they understand that. So if you compare it to getting a piece of mail in your mailbox, where that's what they know about you, what they've done in order to get that to you is a far more intrusive than serving an ad in a certain atmosphere on somebody's digital touch point.
Sure. I mean, for this kind of issue, one where I work every day, we're kind of in the middle, right? Because we're trying to help publishers monetize. So the publisher has to try to bring in dollars from the buy side, and they have to keep their users happy. So they come to the site and consume the ads. For me, the way I think about this whole kind of issue is, maybe conveniently put my engineer hat on and look at the whole space. What's wrong with digital advertising today for all the constituents, for the users of the sites, for the publishers, and for the buyers? Almost everything, if you boil it down to the biggest problem, is just bad targeting. Right? Bad targeting prevents people from monetizing. It causes people to throw 5 ads on a page. It causes users to see irrelevant ads and ads over and over again. And it causes privacy issues because when people try to improve targeting, they don't like things like being tracked.
The idea is the industry will say, oh gosh, advertising is so useful to people when it really addresses their needs and wants. Yeah. And if only we could target people better, and if only you would give up all those silly little concerns about privacy, so we could fiddle with the gauges and control knobs and make sure that the ad you see, if you drink Diet Coke, we're either going to serve you 26 Diet Coke ads, or we're going to serve you the ads for Diet Pepsi to get you to switch over. So the pushback on that, though, to me, seems to be growing all the time. And again, I think it's partly because people feel that this is still a relatively new medium, or the rules are still being written, and they feel that it's sort of like Custer's Last Stand. They can kind of make that determined stand to keep the advertisers from doing what the advertisers have been doing to them since 1860.
I think it's really perhaps the second major pushback of the internet, though. The first one was the user saying we're not going to pay. Mm-hmm. So the New York Times understands that.
Right? And we're going to start understanding a lot more, starting in the first quarter.
So when that happens, that forced people into the advertising model, and now they're just trying to make it work. I agree with you that the perfect ad to the perfect person is a total blue sky dream. What's the reality is doing more in the way of targeting and taking a site making $2 CPM, make it $5, right? And maybe they can stay in business.
But this is a
Right.
paradox, because the idea again is to make people less, to reduce the number of complaints that people have about being targeted. The goal is to target them better, which means
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's people need to understand.
Do you think people
all
are
the-
willing? Do you think people are willing to be educated on this subject, or is it something like, you know, the Chinese communists sending you to a re-education camp during the Cultural Revolution?
Like I said earlier before, like I was telling Stuart that our business is one that gets into the weeds very quickly. Two ad people talking in the back of a room is something that the average person doesn't want to go near, right? There's so many nuances and details in this business. How to surface that up to the American public and make them understand the details of it in a way where they feel comfortable is going to be incredibly challenging. Even like do not track. What's that? What do you think of in your mind? If you were a high-powered attorney for a celebrity client, it's like sounds like do not call, right? Somebody wrote an article I saw that said there's a big difference between do not track, do not call. I mean, you can't liken telemarketing calls to people trying to target users. Why do people track? I could tell you that people track because you need targeting to increase the value of the advertising. Once you add targeting,
Right, but
a publisher gets smaller.
Right, but is that to increase the value of the advertising to the consumer, or to increase the value of the advertising to the advertiser?
But it actually feeds the whole system.
But the
right?
consumer, but I think the consumers hear half of that. They don't, they hear the one half and they don't hear the other half. And part of that is maybe their fault. And part of it is maybe the fault of the industry. We had that story in Sunday's paper. I don't know how many of you saw that about the guy who does the rip-off designer eyeglass frames, and he claims that his business is booming because there's a flaw in Google where the more this guy rips people off, and the more he's written about, and the more people write about him on Yelp and Consumerist and all these websites, the better it is for him, because if you search by the name of his company, the first 97 links that you get back will be rip-off guy, fraud, lawsuit, so on and so forth. But if you type in designer eyewear, Calvin Klein frames, he comes up first because of all the discussion about him. So Google actually had a blog post yesterday, the day before, where they say this is a terrible thing. We thought it wasn't that bad of a problem, but now that this has been mentioned, we've gone back in and we've fiddled with the knobs, and now that shouldn't happen anymore because we're going to assign more value to negative comments, so that if a business is trashed day and night online, that won't help it get higher up in the search results. So I mean, Google is finding things out.
Oh, this stuff.
Or they say they're finding things out, on November 30th, 2010 of the internet age. So.
The guy put himself out of business in one article, which is great. It was a service to mankind that happened.
We may win the Nobel Prize for that.
I read that whole article,
Pulitzer.
with just horror, But
again, the traction that a story like that gets now, I think it's a million times more than back in the day where. I remember, I'm old enough to have written stories where, the average consumer would freak out if a letter came in their mailbox with that, inkjet, where you could personalize the Time Magazine subscription solicitation. Dear Mr. Elliott, we think the people in the Elliott household would love to read Time Magazine. And we know that all your friends in Brooklyn would love to talk to you about all the interesting things you will learn if you read Time Magazine. And there were people who they thought it was the work of the devil. And now, you get that what dwindling amounts of people get that stuff in their snail mail. You just throw it away. You don't think twice about it. But of course that took 20, 30 years for that to dissipate, plus the arrival of 200 other media that perhaps people feel more anguish or agita about because of their feeling of that it's invading their privacy more. Joe, what are you telling the classes on this subject?
Ignore it. No, to your earlier comment about generation, there's a huge generational difference. The younger people are not terribly exercised about this, and older people are. And I think.
And is that because of this sort of phenomenon that they live their lives online and they have no privacy, or they have no interest in privacy, or what have you, or?
Well, part of it is that they have a different definition of privacy. To me, the wrong word to move forward on this with is privacy. It's not about private things. Ari's right. There's very little that's an invasion of anyone's privacy, and very little that's about them as a human being. There's obviously lots and lots of data about what the machine's doing, being directed by people, and there's some attempts to look for patterns and improve targeting, but it's actually not privacy. It's the correct label is data mining, and so you can then be kind of rational in thinking through, okay, what sort of limits and sensible things should apply to data mining? Because the problem with the term privacy is it's completely emotional, and therefore there's no way to talk about it other than get rid of it. No, I mean, as you say, go shoot the bastards, because they're hidden persuaders, and they're surveilling me, they're tracking me everywhere. Most major cities now have video cameras all over. I mean, half of it's to give you traffic tickets, but no, it is. I mean, as well as prevent crime, and so I think that it taps into this big brother kind of fear that we've had all along as you say, Stuart, for a long, long time. So if we can just take it out of this big brother surveillance, invasion of privacy, somehow understanding who I am as a person, I gotta tell you, I have yet to see any internet technology or metrics coming out of it that helps me understand who a person is. They do not. They help you understand measurable categories. Someone who drives a car versus someone who doesn't. Someone who, goes on YouTube 4 times a day versus someone who doesn't. Or the YouTube user that then goes over to the Weather Channel and then goes over. That's what all of this is about. And you use then marketing judgment or advertising to say, that kind of behavior feels like a good place for me to put an ad. I don't know any more about Brian as a human being than about me. But the minute you say privacy, somehow it's like, oh my gosh. Well, it's like these damn scanners.
Well, I guess
suddenly I'm naked and boy, they can see inside me. Well, every doctor I've ever gone to has a damn skeleton hanging in the corner. I mean, the skeletons all look alike.
Well, that's transparency. I think you raise a good point. I think privacy is such a bugaboo because people perceive the word personal in front of it.
Yeah.
The expression in the old days was personal privacy. Yeah. Now we just say privacy.
Well,
and I think people they still hear that word personal attached to this issue, and it's freaking them out.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an old story about they used to have that, well, they still do, and if you go to a grocery store or a drugstore and you get those loyalty cards, like the Dwayne Reed card and so on and so forth, you're supposed to get all this wonderful stuff, coupons at the checkout on the register tape. And again, it's either like they find out you buy Diet Coke every week, they either give you 10 coupons for Diet Coke or 20 coupons for Diet Pepsi. It's either reinforcing loyalty or trying to get you to switch. And it tracks, obviously, everything that you buy every week in the supermarket. And for years, they were trying to data mine that data to try to make some sense out of it. And my understanding is that the people like Kroger and Safeway and even the Walmarts and Targets gave up because they said they really couldn't learn if they connected the dots. So this guy, you know, so you bought eggs and Aquafina and Kellogg's Corn Flakes one time, and the next time you bought Campbell's soup and Clorox bleach and potato salad. What did that mean? That didn't, you know, it didn't
The second guy's on a suicide watch.
Maybe it said a little bit about whether you were a healthy person or a junk food junkie or such.
Yeah, a little bit.
But what did that mean? Again, would it be better to deliver you coupons for more junk food? Or would you be so guilty about your buying patterns that you would be the perfect person to start trying to get to buy the organic salad bar? And I think the consensus is that all those companies just sort of basically gave up on that, and they just pretty much confine themselves to the product by product, brand by brand, where they're either trying to make you more loyal or try to steal you away if you already buy that product. So I mean, to me, this is fascinating because, again, the new technologies give us the feeling, if not the actual ability, to connect those dots, or makes us think that we can connect the dots. And to me, I'm wondering if, like you said, the idea that you go from Google to weatherchannel.com to eBay to nytimes.com, does that tell anything about you as a consumer, much less you as a person?
It tells you a little bit, and you know, the thing about data mining is that it's a different. I mean, these guys are the experts, but it's a different mathematical model. It's a model of probabilities and not absolutes. So what you're just trying to do as a marketer or an advertiser is continually get a little bit better than you were a year ago. I mean, I know it gets popular to sort of each new technology suddenly thus silver bullet, and now, you know, now someone, you know, has got a competitive advantage like you can't believe. But what it really is about getting better, and of course there's, as Ari said, there are people that will abuse information sometimes, and that's why I say if we keep it more in the context of something called data mining, and then it's easy to spot abuse. If it's about the motivation behind whatever it is you're doing with the technology, as you say, Stuart, it gets down to a big ethical question of, well, these guys are being ethical about it and they're being unethical. And as I say, I'm a really old guy here, and I can count on one hand the number of cases where a client intentionally wanted to do something clearly unethical. People make mistakes, things go wrong, you know, they leave stuff out that, you know, maybe they should have put in, and so on and so forth. But our societies, and that relates to about half the world, are so complicated that we've got to be operating more and more on the basis of trust and I'll borrow your word, transparency. Because the minute you want to keep gaming the system, and that's what Washington wants to do, and I suppose that's what most legislators want to do, is somehow, you know, create the rules by which the game is played. You know, sooner or later, someone figures a way around it. One of my best friends is head of the Hastings Center, which is a bioethic think tank, and he led a task force on performance-enhancing drugs. And the conclusion he drew was that the only way to prevent performance-enhancing drugs was to not pay athletes and remove competition, because as long as there's the chance to earn lots of money, at certain percent of athletes will rely on performance-enhancing drugs to get an advantage.
And some of those things corrected.
And you now put in a new test to go after the drug that a group of people has been using for the last 4 years. Tom's point is, our research showed it's guaranteed a year from now a new drug will be used and it's not detectable by the current testing. So I have some of the same feelings about these efforts to sort of like control this idea of being able to put cookies on various sites and generate some data. Yeah, more data than we had before. It's not really different data than we've had before.
But in that case, I think that one of the big differences is that the consumer, i.e. the sports fan, changed the way they felt or the way they reacted to players who were using performance-enhancing drugs. I mean, at one time, the San Francisco Giants fans were all about Barry Bonds, even though you could see that his cap size kept getting bigger and bigger every year when he showed up in spring training. And they knew it. They empirically they knew it, but they, I don't know, ignored it or didn't look the other way or didn't think about it. And now, this World Series that the Giants just won was based to a large degree on Tim Lincecum, who Barry Bonds could hold up over his head and fling into the center field stands. This guy is like 160 pounds soaking wet. And now that's the model of the San Francisco Giant team that all the fans are embracing. So you had that change, and this is very labored, but is there some way that through like what the IAB is doing in terms of efforts to reach out to consumers and get them to think differently about targeting or data mining or privacy or what have you, do you think there's some way that the advertising and marketing industries, the digital folks, can get this attitude adjusted? And you're nodding your head yes. You think that's possible?
Yeah, there's no doubt. Yes.
How do you think what they're doing, what the IAB is doing with that trust mark that they've introduced, with saying this is a kosher site and they're not gonna steal your eyes or your soul,
that you are being behavioral. And the second thing will be when their option is to pay for the sites they want to go to. Mm. Users are gonna very quickly say, "Oh, no, wait, I could be targeted with an ad, or I got to pay everywhere I go." We're going to find very quickly that the targeting wasn't so bad in the first place.
Yeah, it starts to get into a balance. I mean, right now the ad-generated revenue is about the same as other source-generated revenue. So it's almost in half.
Yeah,
50-50.
It's a cost benefit. Like, does anybody here not use EasyPass because you don't want to be tracked? Right? I mean, you look at the receipt at the end of the month, every place you've been, time, everything. It's all there. But I'm not going to sit in line. I love EasyPass. You can't drive in the New York area without an EasyPass. So it's going to be, at some point, people are going to get to that point where the cost benefit is understood. Hopefully it doesn't result in people throwing up paywalls.
Well, I hope they don't throw up.
and things like that. I was remembering something this afternoon when I was thinking about tonight. So this is kind of the closest thing we have to a sort of real-world example. Some of you may be familiar with ad blocking technology. You can put into Firefox and other browsers and prevent ads from being displayed. There's a website, Ars Technica, some of you might be familiar with, that talks. It's a blog about technology. And the user side of a site like that is such that they reached a point where almost 40% of the users had ad blocking turned on, and it was causing them severe revenue impact from this, to the point where the CEO of the company actually reached out on the site to appeal to the users to turn off ad blocking because it was actually hurting their ability to stay in business, kind of bringing it a public face. To which very mixed reactions came back. Everything from all advertising is evil to okay, I'll turn it off now. And I think, it's not.
Are they still ongoing or?
Yeah, they're still ongoing, and but the thing is like not understanding how the internet works in a lot of different ways. In one way, it makes you think that this is scary. My privacy is being taken away. On the other hand, it's not understanding what it costs to provide the thing that you're actually consuming, and maybe thinking that turning an ad blocker on isn't a big deal. There's not only the people who actually produce the content, kind of understand the cost. It's machines, it's people writing content, all these other things that are really, really changing it.
And of course, the content providers, obviously, at the beginning, felt that they're going to make money one way, and then decide, well, they'll do it another way. They'll give the content away for free and make their money off the ads, and that worked for a while, and in some cases it works still, but obviously sites like nytimes.com and many others are coming to the painful realization that if we don't come up with a different business model, we ain't going to be around. Mm-hmm. So we're putting up a paywall starting in the first quarter, and the only thing we've announced so far is that if you have a subscription to the print edition of the New York Times, you will have 100% free permanent access to the website and everything on it. Beyond that, they're up in a room on the 19th floor of our building right now trying to figure out the model. The feeling is it's going to be a low fence rather than a high fence, but we're putting up a fence. We had a fence 3 years ago, 5 years ago, with Times Select. I don't know, does anybody remember that? Where we walled off the editorials and the op-ed columnists like Tom Friedman and Maureen Dowd, and we got up to about 250,000 subscribers to that. And then we took that wall down because we thought we're going to make more money from the ad revenue that we could get if everybody had free access to that content than we could from the subscription revenue. And for a while that worked, and then there was a financial crisis, and all of the advertisers that loved nytimes.com, like high-end retail and luxury goods and travel and high-end autos, all fell down a deep well, and hence our rethinking of that. So, but we're enabling, we enabled that too because, we had the penny press in this country when newspapers first started out. They were a penny, but they weren't free. Nobody gave anything away for free. Television maybe was free, but you had to buy a set. And then you have to buy cable subscription, or you used to have to buy one.
One other angle on the, value and on both sides is, when you talk to people, for example, like at JetBlue, what they will tell you is that the efficiency of going to market through the internet, almost exclusively, and getting valuable information on their customers, first of all, has helped them be pretty successful, but it's also allowed them to invest in the flying experience in line with what their flyers are really looking for, and making it a whole system. So I think it's not unfair, but if you simply look at the activity as nothing but the ad part of the activity and not what the total company is offering and the way it's offering up, it's a little bit of setting up a straw man, so to speak. And Amazon's another good example.
But those are companies that consumers feel are treating them right, quote unquote. As a result, they're willing to do things with that company that they may not with others.
Oh, for sure. But what I was going to just close with is that the secret, I was talking to Fiona Morrison, who's their marketing person, and the secret has been, she said, throughout the whole set of connections, whatever they are, we have got to be open to messages coming back or information coming back and then acting on it. The minute we're simply collecting stuff or doing stuff for our benefit alone, and there's no perceived or actual benefit to the customer, they'll start, as you say, to put you in the bad guy pile, But when it's clear that they care about what you say or what you're doing, and they act on it, and they're open all the way through. She said the best thing that happened to us was the disaster over the holiday when the planes got stuck out there.
The Valentine's Day massacre.
Yeah.
It was like Valentine's
Somehow I
Day
don't think Al Capone would give you a trademark license, but anyway. Yeah, she said that just forced us to realize it's more than just in our ads and in our online ticketing and everything we do. We've just got to be responsive, we've got to be open. And so I think if you look at it holistically, which I know the people in Washington won't do, somehow that focus of are they doing it for bad reasons gets put into perspective a little better.
Wow. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to ask the panelists one more question for them to talk about, and then we're going to open it up to your questions. So what I'd like to ask to wrap with is to ask each of you to talk a little bit about what keeps you up at night, and what's like your New Year's resolution / fervent hope and dream for the new year, other than, of course, universal peace and the unicorn to come back. Brian, you want to take it?
Oh, you
Start in the middle this time.
Sure. What keeps you up at night? The same thing that made me start AdMeld, which was trying to figure out how to monetize publishers' inventory. It's an incredibly hard challenge. And it's gone through so much change, even in the 3 years since we've started. Not the least of which is major companies that are in the space that we play with. Google, Apple, you've heard of some of them, eBay, Amazon, the individual publisher, the content publisher, is the kind of people that we service the most, is an increasingly smaller piece of the online universe with less leverage. We try to increase that leverage with technology and insight and efficiency, but it's a huge challenge. I really hope that my hope is that we can kind of move beyond a lot of the infighting around privacy and other things to really get to a place where I feel like the system works better. Where and I think it can be achieved where users feel they have having a better experience and that their rights are maintained. Publishers can actually make a living creating services, and advertisers can achieve their goals as well. Putting money into the whole system to make it work. So yeah, I mean, kind of that's definitely my take.
Okay, all right.
Well, I don't sleep, so so keep me
You
up
don't
at night.
shave either.
He's 24/7.
Yeah. Everything. It's a great time to be part of this business. I tell every young person that is in college right now or about to go in that if you have to work, this is a pretty good place to be. This industry, anything digital is a good place to be, because it's unbelievably complex. However, it is evolving at a pace realistically where product life cycles could be as quick as 2 weeks. Something could not exist and be the hottest, sexiest, shiniest thing in 2 weeks, and it can also be obsolete in 2 weeks. And keeping up with that is very difficult. We're doing it every day.
Those are the products that are introduced by Microsoft.
Yeah. So I don't look at what I do every day as a job. I'd rather be in Cabo. Don't get me wrong. but I'm a student of this. I love the fact that there's no such thing as perfection. It's just it's ongoing. So keep me up at night. It's what we do.
So the good thing is the bad thing, and it keeps you up, but it's also keeps you buoyant and keeps you going.
Absolutely.
All right, Joe.
Two things. One is better understanding there's two types of sort of mental models that we have in marketing. One is the more traditional one, which I called congregation. That is that we sort of group people are pulled together at one place, one time, watching essentially, or involved reading, watching, listening to essentially one thing, and then we count how many are there, and then that's the more that are there. For some advertisers, the better, or the certain kind of people that are there. What the internet has introduced loud and clear. It was there before, but it's introduced it loud and clear. Is this second model that's an aggregation model. So it's about a customer or prospect and finding out sort of what their life is like and where can I connect with them, and aggregating comparable groups of people together in a similar pattern. And it's something I call neo-tribal. I just wrote a paper on it with John Zogby. So that one thing. The other thing that I think is so exciting is that all these things, the technology and how we're learning how to use it, is allowing us to invert the social change paradigm. And instead of from a top down, it's allowing us to create social change bottom up. I mean, I've always said that the last person who wants a revolution is the king. So that, and I'm seeing more and more social entrepreneurism, companies recognizing that they need to want to be part of social change, and rather than asserting it or pushing it from the top down, they're creating opportunities for it to happen bottom up. I mean, President Obama introduced that loud and clear into his campaign, a kind of a bottom-up thing. But there's examples all over the place. The one that I think is really quite interesting is what PepsiCo is trying, this idea of refresh. It's starting bottom up, asking you, what is it that you're involved in, as opposed to Pepsi saying, well, clean water it's a big problem and we're committed to it. That's one way to do it. But they're going out and asking people, what is it that you're passionate about, and the technology allows you to build it up the other way. And I just am excited about that and want to keep learning more and more about it.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, panelists. It's time for you guys. Does anybody have any questions? Could you raise your hand? Yes, over here. If you want to have them stand and say their name or not, or
you can talk. I'm going to shoot the panel out.
Yeah. That's right. I can just be the voice from stage right.
Yeah. Well, we have 3 classrooms here.
So my name's Andrew Brust. I'm actually on the advisory board of NITEC, and I've worked in technology for about 20 years.
Unfortunately, as a big Microsoft consultant as well.
So I resent your cheap shot, but
I resemble that remark.
Yeah, exactly. I agree and often feel strongly about the idea that oftentimes people are scared of technology, often out of ignorance, especially legislators. And there's a part of me, especially when I'm pushing proposals and such, to want that that constituency to kind of be quiet. On the other hand, I grew up in Greenwich Village in the 1970s and was brought up to question authority. So sometimes I have these strange debates with myself where I say, I don't really like being tracked. I don't really sort of like how all these things might be adding up. And then the right half of my brain says, be quiet and be a good boy. So I don't think that people are afraid of having their data aggregated. I don't think people are necessarily afraid of what's being done with the data. I think people are afraid of what could be done with the data. If the well-meaning people who control the data now were one day replaced by less well-meaning people. And I wonder what we do in technology to allay those fears, because I think that's a big that's a big part of the gap.
I saw Tim O'Reilly speak for the first time a few weeks ago. It was actually at a data kind of conference, and he's very into I don't know, but Tim O'Reilly runs O'Reilly Publishing, the big book publisher, and does a lot of speaking. And his whole talk was about the explosion of data and essentially how do you create policies to protect it. He said data collection is a foregone conclusion. It's already been done. What we need to do now is come up with data policy. Was the whole thing. It was very interesting. I don't know that he had any like huge answers, but it's a huge challenge, especially when you think about healthcare kind of records and things like that. It gets very bad very fast. That turns into like a Gattaca rerun. It was that terrible movie where you got right away they knew whether you're going to die at 50 and then use that against you kind of thing. We're living in a world where that could be possible in our lifetime, I think. Even yours, Joe.
And how do you allay those fears? Is it the good internet keeping seal of approval, or
no?
Or what?
Honestly, at some point, I do think the government has to get involved in some ways because it comes to utility, right? At some point, it will become regulated. The fact that I go to a phishing website, does that need to be regulated? I don't know. My healthcare records online and other things like that employers could potentially have access to. Yeah, I mean that's going to have to be carefully regulated, same way we'd regulate electricity. I mean there needs to be something there. I think, to do it because it becomes almost a public service at that point. It's not a function of business per se.
And it also, in some cases, will help the one side of your brain with the social change that the other side wants.
Does the industry have a lobby to actually proactively help, influence or craft out legislation? I mean, that's how a lot of legislation gets crafted.
Yeah.
Lobbies. So.
Yes, the answer is yes. But again, I go back to education. If you keep it some kind of backroom industry secret that technology companies and ad serving networks and research for analytics guys are playing with it becomes fearful.
Right.
But if you get it out there and talk about it, and then people can collectively agree what's sort of off limits and what's not, that will help to allay the fear. I don't know what it is, but we're in a world where hype is normal, and just take for example the fMRI measurement, brainwave measurement, which is marketers are looking at and trying to see if they can use that to measure response to product ideas and advertising and so on. The reality is I was at a DARPA workshop with some of the leading neuroscientists in the country, along with a couple other social scientists. And the reality is that what is being proposed or claimed or hyped is not real at all. For example, some very recent experiments have been done by very serious people who have clearly demonstrated that fMRI, even super sophisticated fMRI, cannot detect true memories of childhood abuse and fantasized memories. The areas of the brain are identical where they light up. The patterns between the lighted areas are identical between someone who actually was abused and someone who was not. So if that's the level of the technology right now, no way are you going to be able to tell did this Coca-Cola ad somehow make people want to buy an extra six-pack of Coca-Cola. But until that honesty and reality gets out there, and the people in the field stop standing up in front of conferences and clients and saying, "Oh, we could predict this shit all the time." It's like, hey, come on. I mean, sure, you're in business and you can learn a little something, but get off it.
Another question. Yes, over here.
Yeah, Jay Colon, Lee Hecht Harrison. A lot of the themes here have seemed to be around privacy and targeting and the like. And I was thinking of like another take on things is I was talking to some marketers today, and they were saying that one way to help sell things to people is people want to be part of communities.
Yeah.
And people are part of all these virtual communities, or LinkedIn groups, Facebook, or following people. So here where people join with other people they don't even know and feel that. And to what degree do you see that as some theme, or that people use it more? Just like to hear from people about that.
Sure, absolutely. So social media. I mean,
Right.
using social graphing. We are a huge number of, or percentage-wise, of advertisers are using that as a part of their tactic, or as a bucket of their plan. Ideally, I'm not very big on the bucketing idea, but as an overlay. So to know that somebody, or to determine as a threshold, like you were talking about earlier, John, to know someone's a woman because instead of going to iVillage, which is only 66% women, they also went to Modern Bride and BetterWoman.com. If you put all three of them together, someone that goes there makes about 97% probability that it's a female. So again, just simple. I don't see that as intrusive. But then if you overlay that with that person's potential friends, old studies show that friends tend to talk and or buy what their friends seem to like and buy. We've seen a huge lift in results, and there's several companies that just focus on that as their living. They also sell media, but just the data itself is a nice overlay. And we've seen tremendous success doing that.
That's actually not new. Companies used to do that with telephones. Correct. Right? So
Yes.
you call somebody up, you get them to buy something, phone company tells you who they call, and you call them. Right? Like before the internet, this stuff was happening. It's crazy.
Over here, yeah.
Yeah, just a comment on...
Could you just stand?
Sure.
Thanks.
My name is York Rhodes. I spent the last 3 years as CTO of a internet advertising startup, primarily in the lead generation space, so, which is very targeted, but also collects a lot of information, which is interesting too. Just a comment on security. I mean, I think we have to take security into context, right? Because if you look at comparables, you look at, I mean, first of all, there's tons of regulation out there already on security, like HIPAA and COPA, and it's all out there. And anytime you deal with a pharmaceutical company and their microsites, you're dealing with those issues. So there's already tons of regulation that is supposed to uphold the law, right? It's supposed to create the security. The only difference really between a company having their data on the internet and a bank on a street, or your house with your paintings in it, is accessibility, right? So if somebody wants to get into my house, they're going to get in, right? If I have 3 locks on my door, they're going to go through the window, right? So people are always going to get in no matter how much security is there. So more regulation is not going to stop that, right, from my perspective. Okay,
What do you guys think? Is regulation going to be needed to allay consumer concerns, or is it we have enough?
I don't know. I do think, not to totally route to some other direction, but I think that the technology can actually be used to police data, right? Because the very fact that everything online you do is trackable, that includes data collection and data usage.
Track the trackers.
Exactly. Like, there'll be ways to generate signatures and other things to detect where things came from, and I think that the ability to police things be a lot better. Even at AdMeld, we're working on features to show publishers tracking activity that happens on their site, these things will be commonplace next year. So it is getting better. I don't know enough about government to regulate, but.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah. Okay. We got time for a couple more questions. Thank you. Yeah, over there. No, you.
Ben Roberts and Tarrant Exchange. Basically, just wanted to comment quickly on privacy as well, and then ask you a follow-up question. With privacy, I kind of see the regulation almost privatizing data mining, data usage, because it's going to come directly from consumers the way it's coming now. So you're following someone on Twitter and they mention they really like this blouse, it's going to get back to that company somehow. So they're going to be using those terminals. So you're going to search in Google, and then you're going to search for people's responses and consumer behavior in social media. Secondly, I just wanted to respond to, there was a CNN article today about Apple and how they may be the next media company, and Richard Branson with his big toothy smile talking about how the iPad's so wonderful, and it seems like there's a huge amount of infrastructure there.
He's coming out with an iPad magazine.
Yeah,
he's going into the media business.
But I just remember I just graduated, so I remember kind of the whole Napster debate, and when there was a whole flushing out of shareware and of mediaware, and that may happen as well. So Apple is in the best position to do that. Sony was in the best position. They had a record label, they had artists, they had all the licensing. So how can the iTunes library leverage, or that marketplace leverage themselves to be the next media leader?
Well, sometimes it comes out of left field. Like you said, Sony was in place. They had people were used to buying things from them, personal devices like Walkman and Discman. They were in there. They had the record. They had the music, the rights to all the music, but they dropped the ball. And Apple ran with the ball, ran it down the field 16 times, up and down. That's part of the great thing about this new technology is that it levels these playing fields. It lets people do things and come out of unexpected spaces and do things that maybe the old guard wasn't doing right, or maybe was charging consumers too much or whatever. I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, right over here. If you could stand.
All right.
If you can. No, if not, that's all right.
It's fine. My name is Bruce Dorskin. I've bought and sold internet companies for the last 22 years.
Which internet companies were you buying and selling in 1988?
92, I bought Monster.
Oh, okay.
4 people. 10 for less than.
Anyway, what's the question?
That's neither here nor there. My question is, if you look at the American public, they don't do a very good job of really understanding education. Pharmaceutical business, people are happy to be cured for cancer, but they don't want to pay for it. The only reason there's less cigarette sales is it costs $10 a pack to sell cigarettes. And I think when you start to talk about the need for your industry, this industry, to educate the public, unless there's a real economic consequence, unless they market in a way like they market Coca-Cola, the pharmaceutical industry has totally blown it. Everyone's mad at them, yet half the people, a quarter of the people would be dead if it weren't for them. I just wonder if you see any parallels and how you're going to market to a public that doesn't seem to be responsive to marketing messages and is very fickle, i.e. the elections.
I refer to Joe's statement, ignore it. But for a lot of reasons, and this I think touches base on a bunch of things we talked about. I attended this talk earlier this week about kind of the future of publishing and saw a very interesting statistic they had done on a major magazine that said the average user engagement on print was 60 minutes, on iPhone was 40 minutes, and on iPad was 90 minutes, and on the web was 3 minutes. And that the web is actually a terrible place to offer content. It's a great place for transactions. Yep. It's a great place to look up the weather forecast. It's a great place to buy Christmas gifts. It's a terrible place to go actually read long-form content. And that's why he actually used Richard Branson's iPad magazine and was saying that basically Branson hasn't been in publishing for 20 years. He skipped the web. He's such a savant. He saw the web as a terrible place to do publishing. He sees the iPad. This is where it's going. So how will Apple become a media company? They're going to figure out how to digitize media in a way that people are going to engage with it. How will mobile become the future of advertising? Because people don't get angry about newspaper advertising or magazine advertising. It's highly targeted in a lot of cases. If we can recreate that same experience digitally, I think we can have success there. And it's really interesting. I think we won't go to the web, the thing that people are most upset about tracking, to get a lot of the content in the future. And also, if you're only spending 3 minutes at each site, obviously you have to track you around in order to make any money off you, right? Because it's very hard to monetize 3 minutes of time online. So.
If you think about advertising as service to customers and potential prospects, what Brian is talking about will happen. If you think of advertising as my way to inject you with my ideas and a selling message to change your behavior, then it's not going to happen.
All right. And I think on that note, we're going to thank our panelists.
To say something.
I'm sorry.
A correction. because you talked about the do not track list, there's not being, so the whole point of the proposal is that there is no do not track list. They're saying there has to be a universal mechanism, you know, and that's never going to work, and so they're going to make a browser button that'll be one thing that will block all tracking, so which is different to what.
All right. Well, we'll see how that moves forward. Thank you very much.
Round of applause and Stuart at the back. Thank you everyone for coming out this evening. The handouts that you got on the way in have a survey on the back. We really appreciate your input. If you could fill that out, leave it on the desk on the way out. Thanks a lot.
And your name tags.
Thank you. Recycle,
Thank you so much.
Give a card back.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.